Happy Saturday, Tony, back with another deep dive into 10 unsolved mysteries from the state of Nevada. Follow us on our social media links listed below, and as always, any case suggestions, comment, or message me. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin. On April 26th, 2022, Aiden Clune left his home in Sonoma County, California, and embarked on a journey that would end in mystery. He traveled east, arriving in Utah before continuing on to Nevada. That night, he stayed at a hotel in Wells, Nevada, where he checked out early the next morning at 6:23 a.m. on April 27th. From there, he traveled south on U.S. Highway 93. This was the last confirmed sighting of him. At 8:50 a.m. that same day, a Nevada state trooper discovered Aiden's red 2007 Nissan Frontier parked on the shoulder of Highway 93 near mile marker 23. The truck had visible damage, including a dented rear bumper and duct tape securing the driver's side mirror. Inside the vehicle, investigators found Aiden's wallet, a knife, and other personal items, but there was no sign of him nearby. The situation grew more concerning when search teams identified Aiden's footprints leading away from the vehicle, heading deep into the desert. Remarkably, searchers followed his tracks for over 10 air miles, indicating an erratic and desperate path. At one point, the footprints suggested that Aiden had removed his shoes and was running through the harsh landscape. Despite an extensive search effort, the trail eventually went cold, and no further trace of Aiden was found. Authorities have speculated that Aiden may have experienced a severe mental health crisis, possibly leading to disorientation or a deliberate effort to vanish. His sudden departure, abandoned vehicle, and erratic behavior in the desert suggest that he may have been in a fragile mental state, perhaps fleeing from perceived threats or grappling with internal turmoil. The Sonoma County Police Department is overseeing the investigation, working in collaboration with Nevada authorities. Despite their efforts, Aiden's disappearance remains unsolved, leaving his family and friends with more questions than answers. The search for Aiden continues, and those who loved him hold on to hope that one day the truth will emerge. Jennifer Casper Ross vanished under mysterious and troubling circumstances on May 5, 2005 in Reno, Nevada. Her last known movements began at the Peppermill Hotel and Casino with a friend early that morning. From there, she made her way to the Reno Sparks Cab Company, her mother's workplace, though her mother was not present at the time. Jennifer, highly intoxicated, reportedly couldn't pay her cab fare. In a frantic bid to avoid paying, she fled, breaking her high heels, climbed a fence behind the business, and disappeared. Her home was only half a block away, but she never returned. Shortly before she vanished, Jennifer made a call to her father in Las Vegas, expressing a desire to visit, but she never arrived. This cryptic phone call added to the confusion surrounding her disappearance. Her husband, Sean Ross, later told authorities a troubling story. The night before, Jennifer had been drunk, her wrists cut, and she had packed a bag with clothes and family photos, insisting she needed to leave. Sean said she left 2 handwritten notes that, among other things, detailed care for their son should anything happen to her. However, Jennifer's mother questioned their authenticity, alleging that Sean and Jennifer had practiced forging each other's handwriting. Adding to the mystery, Sean initially omitted key details from his statements to the police, details like Jennifer's injuries, the notes, and her packed bag. These inconsistencies, combined with his subsequent behavior, raised suspicions. He missed several days of work after Jennifer's disappearance, sold her van before it could be examined, and filed for divorce just 3 months later, securing custody of their son. Jennifer's life leading up to her disappearance was complex. Once a professional ballerina, she had transitioned to teaching dance after a tailbone injury ended her performing career. More recently, she had worked as an exotic dancer, but was fired a week before she went missing. Struggling with financial issues, She was also grappling with significant personal stress. Despite these challenges, Jennifer was a highly accomplished individual. A Dean's List student at the University of Nevada at Reno, she majored in biomedical engineering and dreamed of finding cures for autism or cancer. Her academic and professional ambitions contrasted sharply with the chaotic circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Jennifer's case remains unsolved, but foul play is suspected. The conflicting accounts, potential evidence tampering, and Jennifer's sudden disappearance all point to a tragic mystery that continues to haunt those who knew and loved her.
Camille Dodson was last seen in May 1994 in the area of the 300 block of South Casino Center Boulevard in Las Vegas, Nevada. At the time of her disappearance, she was married to Gary Dodson, a man who had gained national attention after being wrongfully convicted of rape in 1975. DNA evidence later exonerated Dodson, and his accuser recanted her story, ultimately compensating him with $17,500. Dodson and Camille married after his release from prison, but their life together was far from stable. Camille struggled with crack and marijuana use, and she was also involved in prostitution. When she vanished, she had an outstanding misdemeanor warrant and had confided to friends that she was fearful, though she never disclosed what was troubling her. Her disappearance followed a complicated timeline. Initial reports state that Camille was reported missing in either 1994 or 1995, but oddly, this report was deleted from the system 3 months later. It wasn't until 2003 that a new missing person report was filed. In a startling revelation decades later, Camille's daughter discovered that her mother had actually been in police custody when the initial missing person report was filed. Records revealed that Camille was arraigned on September 26, 1994, after a drug-related arrest. Her last confirmed sighting was when she walked away from the Clark County Detention Center, having been released following a drug test. That moment marked the last trace of her. She never showed up for her scheduled court date and disappeared without any further contact with her family. Camille's last known residence was at the Siegel Apartments on Paradise Road, a few miles from the Strip. Despite her struggles, those close to her insisted it was uncharacteristic of her to vanish without warning, especially since she left behind a daughter. Over the years, the passage of time has deepened the mystery and heightened concerns. Camille's background includes work as a bartender, waitress, dancer, and store clerk, showing she had a history of resilience and adaptability. However, her troubled life and the dangers associated with her circumstances suggest she may have met with foul play. Anthony Franco disappeared on the morning of May 8, 1983, while walking to Lemon Valley Elementary School in Lemon Valley, Nevada. A fifth grader, Anthony lived with his mother and stepfather just half a mile from the school, and his daily routine involved walking north along Fremont Street to get there. However, on the day he vanished, it appears he deviated from his usual route. A witness reported seeing him in a cul-de-sac at the southern end of Fremont Street, talking to an unknown person driving a rusted-out vehicle, possibly a Ford Pinto or a Camaro. Anthony never made it to school and was never heard from again. The school did not alert Anthony's family when he failed to show up for class. Consequently, they only realized he was missing later that afternoon when he didn't make his usual after-school call to his mother. After returning home and finding Anthony still absent, his mother notified the police. Anthony had recently participated in a 4-H club event the day before his disappearance, where he proudly won a blue ribbon for showcasing his pet pony and 2 rabbits. He had taken the ribbon with him to school that day, eager to share his achievement with classmates, which indicated his positive mood and enthusiasm. While Anthony had run away once before, about a month earlier, the circumstances were markedly different. Following a punishment for poor grades, he had briefly fled into the mountains, leaving a goodbye note and taking food and dishes with him, only to return home in tears a few hours later, promising never to run away again. This earlier incident led authorities to initially assume he had run away once more, causing a delay of several days in exploring other possibilities. However, his mother never believed this theory, convinced that Anthony's joy over his recent 4-H success and his nature made it unlikely he would run away voluntarily again. Both his mother and stepfather were thoroughly investigated and cleared of any involvement after passing polygraph tests. His mother described Anthony as somewhat naive and trusting, the type of child who might talk to a stranger. Investigators now believe he was abducted during his walk to school and likely murdered, though his mother continues to hold on to hope that he is still alive. Despite efforts to identify suspects, no strong leads have ever emerged. Anthony's disappearance remains unsolved. Jessica Foster, known as Jessie, disappeared under troubling circumstances in North Las Vegas, Nevada on March 28, 2006. Originally from Canada, Jessie grew up in Kamloops, British Columbia, before moving to Calgary to live with her father and finish high school. Bright and ambitious, she planned to attend university, but got caught in a dangerous situation that would lead to her mysterious disappearance. Jessie's last contact with her family was by phone on March 28, 2006, from her residence on the 1000 block of Cornerstone Place in North Las Vegas. Her live-in boyfriend, Peter B. Todd, claimed she left their home on April 3rd, supposedly to attend a dentist appointment. According to Todd, when he returned, Jessie was gone, along with all her belongings, except her makeup and hair dryer, items her family insists she would never leave behind. Jessie's family later discovered she had been lured into sex trafficking. In April 2005, she met Donald Vaz in Calgary, who invited her on a short trip to Atlantic City, New Jersey. From there, they traveled to Las Vegas, where Jessie became trapped in a cycle of exploitation. She stayed in Nevada far longer than intended, missing opportunities back home, including 2 jobs she had lined up. Her relationship with Peter Todd, who was allegedly her pimp, was abusive. In June and September 2005, Jessie was arrested on prostitution-related charges. Around the time of her first arrest, Todd assaulted her so severely that she ended up in the hospital with a broken jaw. An escort agency employee noticed Jessie often had bruises, further evidence of ongoing abuse. Jessie maintained daily contact with her family, even visiting them for Christmas in 2005. However, her departure on Christmas morning to return to Las Vegas was abrupt. She continued calling her loved ones until March 28, 2006. Just before disappearing, she confided in her sister that she planned to leave Todd, suggesting she was seeking an escape from her dangerous situation. Several details raised concerns about Jessie's disappearance. The makeup and hair dryer left behind contradicted her meticulous nature. She had $20,000 in the bank from a car accident settlement, untouched since her disappearance, and Jessie's credit cards, bank account, and phone have seen no activity since March 28th, a major red flag considering her close ties with her family. Both American and Canadian authorities are investigating Jessie's case. Despite the suspicion surrounding Peter Todd, no charges have been filed. He maintains his innocence, but the circumstances in his abusive history make him a central figure in the investigation. Jessie's family remains deeply involved in the search for answers. They believe she would never willingly cut off contact, especially with her sister's wedding reception approaching in April 2006. Their fear is that Jessie fell victim to violence tied to her trafficking situation. Moren Fields disappeared under mysterious circumstances on February 15, 2006, after an argument with her husband, Paul Fields, at their home in Pahrump, Nevada. That morning, Paul claimed Moren left for work at the Pahrump Valley branch of Wells Fargo Bank, where she had been employed as a teller for 3 months. However, Moren never arrived for her 8:30 a.m. shift. After waiting 20 minutes, her concerned co-workers called Paul, who said he thought she had already left. Following this call, Paul went to the police station, later claiming he tried to report Moren missing but was told to wait 24 hours. Police, however, stated that Paul didn't mention a missing person and instead inquired if there had been any accidents involving a green Hyundai. The next day, February 16th, Maureen's 2004 green Hyundai was discovered in Inyo County, California, approximately 12 miles from the Nevada border. The car was stuck in the sand about 125 feet off the road in a remote desert area. Inside the vehicle, the driver's seat was fully reclined, and her slippers and eyeglasses were found under the gas pedal. Maureen's purse, containing her wallet and credit cards, was left next to religious pamphlets, fanned out in an orderly fashion. Additionally, prescription bottles for painkillers and tranquilizers were present, some empty. A pair of knotted pantyhose was found in the car, and nearby on the ground, authorities discovered a blanket stain with a small amount of blood and vomit. Despite an extensive search of the desert, authorities found no sign of Maureen. Initially, investigators considered the possibility that she had wandered into the desert and committed suicide, but the lack of a note and the peculiar arrangement of the scene raised doubts. DNA evidence from an unidentified male was later found on some of the items at the scene, leading investigators to believe the scene had been staged by someone involved in Maureen's disappearance. Paul Fields quickly became the prime suspect. According to Maureen's family and friends, the couple's marriage was troubled, and Maureen had been considering divorce. Friends described Paul as controlling and jealous, and Maureen reportedly expressed fear that he might kill her. On February 14th, the day before her disappearance, Maureen was visibly upset at work, ominously telling co-workers, "Something's going to happen." Paul claimed that before she left home on the 15th, Maureen had said, "I might as well do it now. Why wait?" He also alleged that she had been draining thousands of dollars from their joint accounts and had a gambling problem, suggesting she staged her own disappearance to escape her troubles. However, police found inconsistencies in his financial claims, determining that Maureen had taken only one $4,000 cash advance to pay off another credit card. While Paul allowed police to search his property multiple times, his cooperation waned over time. He initially agreed to a polygraph test, but later declined on the advice of his attorney. Adding to the suspicion, after the required 90-day waiting period, Paul attempted to have Maureen declared legally absent to remove her name from their jointly owned property. This prompted Maureen's father to intervene, seeking legal guardianship to prevent Paul from gaining control of her assets. Paul ultimately withdrew his claim of abandonment, but in 2009, he successfully had Maureen declared legally dead and was appointed executor of her estate. A significant development occurred in 2012 when new DNA evidence linked an unidentified man to the knotted pantyhose found at the scene. This man, a registered sex offender in his mid-70s at the time of Maureen's disappearance, had prior convictions for child molestation and had been arrested in 2011 for attempting to lure a young girl into his car. Although he lived in Pear Blossom, California, more than 200 miles away, investigators confirmed he had been in the Pahrump area in 2006. Before his death in 2014, he claimed to have met Maureen, stating they had consensual sex and that he left her alive in Death Valley. He also alleged that he knew Paul, but provided no further information about her disappearance. Suffering from dementia, his statements were inconsistent, and authorities emphasized that his involvement did not rule out Paul as a suspect. Maureen's friends and family reject the notion that she would have disappeared voluntarily. They describe her as meticulous about her appearance, never leaving the house without makeup or wearing casual clothing in public. She had undergone cosmetic procedures and cherished her pet pit bull, which she would never have abandoned. Maureen's glasses, contact lenses, shoes, and essential medications were all left behind, further suggesting she did not plan to leave. Today, Moren Fields' disappearance remains an unsolved mystery. Despite multiple theories and suspects, no one has been charged in connection with her case. In 1985, Amanda Fravel made the bold decision to move from her home state of California to Las Vegas, Nevada, seeking a fresh start. Initially, she stayed with a friend and her friend's family, but after a short while, she found it necessary to move into her own place. Unfortunately, the cost of living was high, so she decided to share an apartment with her roommate Lou Frank. Fravel found work at a Taco Bell, but it was a modest job. In June 1986, her mother, hoping to reconnect with her daughter, sent her money to help her return home to Rancho Cordova, California for a visit. However, Amanda never made it to California. On June 13, 1986, she was last seen leaving the apartment on South 3rd Street in Las Vegas. According to Frank, she was planning to pick up her paycheck from Taco Bell and visit her ex-boyfriend, though she was never heard from again. Fravel didn't own a car, and while it's unclear how she got around, there were reports that she was known to hitchhike. Yet, a friend later revealed that Amanda had stopped hitchhiking after a bad experience. She vanished without a trace, never arriving at either of the places she intended to visit. A few weeks after Amanda's disappearance, her mother and stepfather flew to Las Vegas to investigate what had happened. They spoke with her ex-boyfriend and with her roommate, Lou Frank. Upon inspecting Amanda's apartment, they discovered that all of her belongings had been packed up and her 2 kittens, who had always been well cared for, were left unfed and neglected. Amanda had always been a responsible pet owner and would never have abandoned her animals in such a manner. This only deepened the suspicions surrounding her disappearance. Frank, a man in his late 40s at the time, struck her family as odd. He told them he was from Georgia but spoke without any discernible accent and claimed he had come to Nevada to open a brothel. However, there was no record of Lou Frank in Nevada state records, leading some to believe that Lou Frank might have been an alias. His whereabouts remain unknown to this day, and despite the suspicion surrounding him, he has never been named as a suspect in Amanda's disappearance. Fravel's background was troubled. She had a chaotic upbringing and an unhappy home life in California. Her mother had purchased a plane ticket for Amanda to return home, but her friend, who had known her well, believed that Amanda would never go back to her family due to the turmoil she had experienced. Instead, Amanda had confided in her friend about a plan to travel to Canada to meet a musician she had been corresponding with. Despite these personal plans, Amanda's sudden and unexplained disappearance suggests foul play. To this day, her case remains unsolved, and the mystery of what happened to Amanda Fravel endures. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department continues to investigate her case, and anyone with information is encouraged to contact them at 800-492-6565. Janette Corpus was last seen at her home in Reno, Nevada on January 13, 2003, when a real estate agent visited her house. Everything seemed normal, and there were no immediate signs of trouble. On January 21st, she had a phone conversation with her ex-husband, which would be the last time anyone heard from her. The case took a dark turn on January 25th, when Janette's husband, Lyle Marsh Montgomery, abandoned her 3-year-old son at a Shopko store in Salt Lake City, Utah. The child, too young to remember his last name or his mother's full name, was unidentifiable for several days. When authorities finally made the connection, they realized Janette was missing. Montgomery fled after abandoning the boy but was apprehended a few days later and charged with misdemeanor child abuse. From the start, he was the prime suspect in Janette's disappearance. Their marriage had been brief, less than a month, and its legality was questionable, as Janette may not have finalized her divorce from her previous husband. The relationship was volatile. In October 2002, Janette had accused Montgomery of domestic violence, and there were lingering concerns about her safety. Disturbingly, Janette's son told police that he had witnessed Montgomery firing a gun at his mother, but missing. This shocking revelation added urgency to the investigation. When authorities searched the couple's home, they found a chilling scene. The master bedroom was missing both its bed and dresser, and blood had soaked through the carpet and padding, staining the floor underneath. Smaller blood trails were found in the shower, hallway, and entryway, and DNA testing confirmed it was Janette's blood. Adding to the grim discovery, police found several guns, knives, and boxes of ammunition in the house. After abandoning Janette's son, Montgomery had attempted suicide by overdosing on drugs and alcohol in their home, but he survived and was hospitalized for psychiatric treatment. Released on February 27, 2003, Montgomery ultimately took his own life on April 8th, shortly after being released from jail. He shot himself to death, leaving no note or confession behind, and with his death, the investigation stalled. Authorities remain convinced that Montgomery was responsible for Janette's presumed murder, but without his cooperation or further evidence, her case remains unsolved. Janette's son, who had witnessed the traumatic events, was placed in the care of his biological father in California. Though Janette had disappeared briefly in the past, she always maintained contact with her family and returned home quickly, which made this disappearance particularly alarming. Randy Evers was last seen between 11:30 p.m. on February 15th and 12:30 a.m. on February 16th, 1992. At the time, he was wrapped in a blanket and asleep on the living room floor of his family's home in the 300 block of East Rochelle Avenue in Las Vegas, Nevada. That evening, his family was hosting a birthday party for his father, Mike Evers, with approximately 15 guests in attendance. Sometime during the party, Randy vanished without a trace, and he has never been seen again. Investigators initially considered it unlikely that he wandered off on his own, as it was a cold night, and Randy had a known fear of the dark. His family strongly believes he was kidnapped, though authorities initially suspected that some family members might have been involved in his disappearance. From the start, the behavior of Randy's father and stepmother, Mike and Tina Evers, raised suspicions. Neither of them participated in the search for the missing child, and when the police informed Mike of Randy's disappearance, he had to be literally dragged out of bed. Both parents showed little interest in the investigation, which fueled speculation and distrust. Tina's account of her whereabouts on the night Randy disappeared contains several small inconsistencies. She claimed that she and a group of friends left the party at 11:30 p.m. to go to the Gold Coast, a nearby casino, leaving Randy in the care of an adult guest who had passed out on the living room couch. It remains unclear whether Mike accompanied her to the casino or stayed behind, as there are conflicting reports about whether he was with Tina or asleep in a back bedroom during this critical time period. When the group returned around 3:30 a.m., Randy was gone. An extensive search of the surrounding area yielded no clues to his whereabouts. In the years following Randy's disappearance, Mike and Tina moved to Southern California, had another child, a son, and eventually divorced. They had a daughter born before Randy went missing, and there were no reported issues involving either child. Throughout the investigation, Mike and Tina were uncooperative with authorities, but did not actively evade law enforcement. The lack of cooperation and the inconsistencies in their stories continued to cast a shadow of suspicion over them, but no definitive evidence has been found to implicate either of them in Randy's disappearance. Numerous theories have surfaced over the years about what might have happened to Randy. Some speculate that he was sold, while others believe he may have been accidentally or intentionally killed by his father or stepmother after the party. There are also theories that he was abducted by a stranger, a family friend, or even his biological mother. However, none of these scenarios have ever been substantiated. Randy's biological mother, who lived in Southern California at the time and had legal custody of him, has continued to search for answers. Meanwhile, nearly everyone connected to the case, except for the investigators, has left the Las Vegas area. Mike Evers passed away in 2014, and in 2022, when a journalist from the Las Vegas Review-Journal attempted to speak with Tina about the case, she refused to comment, stating only, "You guys have ruined my family. The police have ruined my family," before asserting her desire to be left alone. At one point, evidence was presented to a Nevada grand jury, but no indictments were issued. Despite decades passing since Randy's disappearance, the case remains open and unsolved. In a media interview in the spring of 2015, a detective revealed that they had received a potential DNA match indicating that Randy might still be alive and living somewhere in the western United States. Ruby Dorman finished her shift at the Flamingo Laughlin in Laughlin, Nevada, where she worked as a buffet hostess, at 2:26 p.m. on April 20th, 2003. After clocking out, She changed out of her uniform and headed to the parking garage where her white Honda Accord was parked on the 5th floor. The drive to her mobile home should have taken approximately 20 minutes, meaning she would have arrived around 2:45 p.m. However, her roommate, who was asleep at the time, did not know exactly when Dorman got in. Later, her car was discovered parked outside the mobile home, with her purse and keys left inside, but there was no sign of Dorman herself. Earlier that morning, Dorman's daughter, Julianne White, whose birth name was Juanita White, had called Dorman's roommate to ask for directions to the residence. Authorities believe that once Dorman returned home from work, she and her daughter left together. Then at 4:50 p.m. that same day, White returned to Dorman's home alone, driving her mother's Honda Accord. She dropped off the car and then drove away in her own Jeep Cherokee. From that moment on, Ruby Dorman vanished without a trace and has never been heard from again. When police later searched the car, they found no evidence indicating what might have happened to her. Foul play is strongly suspected in Dorman's disappearance, and the investigation quickly focused on Julianne White. White had a documented history of mental illness and a long-standing and contentious relationship with her mother. Over the years, White had threatened Dorman several times and reportedly harbored deep resentment toward her. One particularly disturbing aspect of White's behavior involved her belief that her mother was somehow connected to the infamous 1969 murders of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, who were victims of Charles Manson and his followers. White claimed that Dorman had actually ordered Manson and his cult to kill Rosemary LaBianca, who was Julianne's aunt on her father's side. However, there is absolutely no evidence to support any connection between Dorman and the Manson family, suggesting that White's fixation on this story was a delusion fueled by her mental instability. Authorities interviewed Julianne White twice after Dorman's disappearance, but her statements were inconsistent. Despite the fact that Dorman's roommate had witnessed White driving both her own Jeep and her mother's Honda Accord on the day of the disappearance, White denied ever being at the house or seeing her mother that day. Not long after these interviews, White relocated, and investigators have not been able to locate her for further questioning. Without enough concrete evidence to charge her, the case has remained in limbo, with White remaining a person of interest but never officially charged. Ruby Dorman was known to be an extremely reliable person, described by her co-workers and friends as someone who had not missed a single day of work in over 20 years prior to April 2003. Her sudden disappearance was completely out of character, and the fact that her credit cards have not been used since only deepens the mystery. Investigators continue to treat the case as a homicide, believing foul play was involved, but with no new leads and Julianne White still missing, the case remains unsolved.